So I've been digging up old philosophy books that I had lying around because I've wanted to talk about the philosophy behind the ideas that sovereign citizens talk about, and the philosophy behind what the things that I talk about on this channel most of the time. The first video I wanted to do was on Rousseau's The Social Contract, but I changed my mind, and I think it's probably better to start in chronological order. At the end of the day, what sovereign citizens are struggling with is one of the most basic questions that humanity has had to tangle with over the last, let's say, 6,000 years. And that is, why do you have to obey the laws of the country in which you reside? And this is not a question that was invented in, the 2000s with the advent of the internet. People have been asking why they have to obey the law for thousands of years. And the first writing that I want to bring up is Crito by Plato. And it's basically a dialogue between Socrates and Crito. The background here is Socrates has been accused of corrupting the youth in Athens and sentenced to death. Crito goes to jail and offers him the opportunity to escape from jail. And they debate whether or not Socrates should escape from jail and thus violate the laws of Athens, or whether he should remain in prison and die and therefore remain obedient to the laws of Athens. And I'm only going to read the good parts just to keep this short. Quote, Socrates talking here. Therefore, based on what you've agreed, we must examine the following: whether it is just or unjust for me to try to leave here when I was not acquitted by the Athenians. And if it seems just, let's try it, and if not, let's abandon it. Continuing, Socrates. Let's look together, my good man, and if at any point you have an objection to what I am saying, make it, and I will persuade you. If not, you blessed man, finally quit saying the same thing over and over, that I have to get out of here against the will of the Athenians. And here we come to Socrates' main argument. Quote, here in turn is the next point, or rather, I'll ask you, when someone has made an agreement with someone else, and it is just, must he keep to it or betray it? Crito responds, he must keep to it. Socrates, observe what follows from this. By leaving here without persuading the city, are we not doing someone harm, and those whom we should least of all harm or not? And are we keeping to the just agreements we made or not? Crito says, I'm unable to answer what you're asking. Socrates continues, well, look at it this way. If the laws and the community of the city came to us when we were about to run from here, or whatever it should be called, and standing over us were to ask, tell me, Socrates, what are you intending to do? By attempting this deed, aren't you planning to do nothing other than destroy us, the laws, and the civic community as much as you can? Or does it seem possible to you that any city where the verdicts reached have no force, are made powerless and corrupted by private citizens should continue to exist and not be in ruins? What will we say, Crito, to these questions and others like them? Because there's a lot more a person could say, especially an orator, on behalf of this law we're destroying, which establishes the verdicts that have been decided as sovereign. Or will we say to them, the city treated us unjustly and did not decide the case properly? Will we say this or something like it? Socrates continues. What if the laws then said, Socrates, did we agree on this, and we and you, to honor the decisions that the city makes? And if we were surprised to hear them say this, perhaps they would say, Socrates, don't be surprised at what we're saying, but answer, since you are used to participating in questioning and answering. Come then, what reason can you give us and the city for trying to destroy us? Did we not, to begin with, give birth to you? And wasn't it through us that your father married your mother and conceived you? So show those of us the laws concerning marriages. What fault would you find that keeps them from being good? I find no fault with them. What about the laws concerning the upbringing and education of children by which you two were raised? Or didn't those of us the laws established on this matter give good instructions when they directed your father to educate you in the arts and gymnastics? They did, I would say. Well then, since you have been born and brought up and educated, could you say you are not our offspring and slave from the beginning, both you and your ancestors? And if this is so, do you suppose that justice between you and us is based on equality? And do you think that whatever we might try to do to you, it is just for you, to do these things to us in return. In other words, here Socrates is arguing that he owes his existence to the state. His mother and father were married under state, etc. He benefited from laws of education. Therefore, he is obliged to follow the laws of Athens. And let's continue. Socrates continuing. Consider then, Socrates, laws might say whether we speak the truth about the following, that it is not just for you to try to do to us what you are now attempting. In other words, to break out of jail. For we gave birth to you, brought you up, educated you, and gave you and all the other citizens everything we could that's good. And yet even so we pronounce that we have given the power to any Athenian who wishes, when he has been admitted as an adult, and sees to the affairs of the city, and us the laws, and is not pleased with us, to take his possessions and leave for wherever he wants. And if any among you wants to live in a colony because we in the city do not satisfy him, or if he wants to go somewhere else and live as a foreigner, none of us laws stands in the way or forbids him from taking his possessions with him and leaving for wherever he wants. In other words, if you had a problem with laws before this time, when he was about to be put to jail, why didn't he leave? Continuing. But whoever remains with us, having observed how we decided lawsuits and take care of other civic matters, we claim that this man, by his action, has now made an agreement with us to do what we command him to do. And we claim that anyone who does not obey us is guilty 3 times over, because he disobeys us who gave birth to him and who raised him, and because despite agreeing to be subject to us, he does not obey us or persuade us if we are doing something improper. And although we give him an alternative and don't angrily press him to do what we order, but instead we allow him either of those 2 possibilities, either to persuade us or to comply, he does neither of this. We say that you especially will be liable to these charges, Socrates, if indeed you carry out your plan, and not least of the Athenians, but most of all, if then I would say, how do you mean? Perhaps they would scold me justly, saying that I have made this agreement more than other Athenians. They might say, Socrates, we have great evidence for this, and that we in the city satisfy you. For you would have never lived here more than all of the other Athenians unless it seemed particularly good to you, and you never left the city for a festival except once to Isthmos, but never to anywhere else except on military duty, nor did you ever make another trip like other Athenians, nor did any urge seize you to get to know a different city or other laws, but we and our city were sufficient for you. In other words, by choosing to stay in Athens, Socrates has shown that he likes the laws of Athens. He likes the benefit that those laws have provided him. Let's continue. So intently did you choose us and agree to be governed by us that in particular because the city was satisfactory, you had children in it, and moreover at your trial you could have proposed exile if you had wished, but what you are now trying to do to the city without her consent you could have done then with her consent. At the time you prided yourself on not being angry if you had to die, and you chose death. You said in preference to exile, but now you neither feel shame in the face of those words, nor have you any respect for us the laws. By trying to destroy us, you're doing what the most despicable slave would do, trying to run away contrary to the contract and the agreement by which you agreed to be governed by us. So answer us first on the particular point of whether or not we speak the truth in claiming that you agreed to be governed by us in deed and not merely in words. What can we say to this credo? Mustn't we agree? In other words, you agreed to be governed because you chose to remain in Athens and receive the benefits of the laws of Athens. Continuing, aren't you, they might say, going against your contract and agreement with us ourselves, which you were not forced to agree to, nor deceived about, nor compelled to decide upon in a short time, but over 70 years, and in which time you could have gone away if we did not satisfy you, and these agreements did not appear just to you. You did not prefer Lacedaemonia, nor Crete, each of which you claim is well governed, nor any other of the Hellenic cities or the foreign ones, but you left it less than the lame and the blind and the other disabled people. Evidently, the city and also we the laws were so much more pleasing to you than other Athenians, for is a city without laws satisfactory to anyone? Now then, won't you keep to your agreement? You will, if you are convinced by us at any rate, Socrates, and at least you won't look ridiculous by leaving the city. Will you flee then from well-governed cities and from the most civilized people? Is it worth it to you to live like this? Will you associate with them, Socrates, and feel no shame when talking to them, "What will you say, Socrates? What you said here, that virtue and justice are most valuable for humans, and lawfulness and the laws, and you don't think the conduct of this Socrates will appear shameful? One should think so." In other words, 2,000 years ago, Socrates is having the same argument that we're now having on YouTube. And he resolves it very simply. He says that he cannot disobey the laws of Athens because he has benefited from them for 70 years, and he had the option of leaving the city and living under other laws or moving into the wilderness and having to obey zero laws, but he still remained. And let's keep in mind, this is 2,000 years ago. What benefits were there to Athens? Maybe, I guess, some grapes, um, roofs. I think they had an aqueduct. So 2,000 years later, the benefits of living in a civilized society are much stronger. We now have internet, power, electricity, um, modern housing, healthcare, modern healthcare. We have social safety net. We have unemployment insurance, health insurance, all these things. Modern roads, cell phones, cars. We the amount of benefits that exist currently from living in a civilized society are 10,000% larger than in the times of Plato. But even 2,000 years ago, Plato shows to die, because let's keep in mind, if he remains in Athens, he dies. He chooses to die and remain and obey the laws of Athens rather than live and disobey the laws of Athens. Now, you might philosophically disagree with the complete conclusions of Plato. You might think that you should have the right to benefit from and live in society while not being subject to those laws. I mean, you might disagree with the concept of a state, the concept of laws. There are anarchist philosophers that have made those arguments over the last 500 years. But here's the point: this country was not founded by anarchists. This country was founded by the founding fathers, Jefferson, Adams, etc., who were influenced by John Locke and Montesquieu and Rousseau, who were themselves Enlightenment thinkers who were simply restating ideas from Plato and Socrates. In other words, the philosophical foundation of the government that we live in is what is written in these words, that if you live in society, you have to obey their laws because of the reasons given here, that you receive benefits, and in return for those benefits, you have to obey the laws of society. And beyond any discussion of statutes or case law, this is the reason why sovereign citizen arguments do not work, because you are operating, you're trying to introduce an anarchist, individualist argument based on anarchist philosophy in a society that does not respect those arguments. Those arguments do not hold weight in this society. And no amount of cherry picking and taking laws and court decisions out of context is going to change that.